Have you ever wondered if it's possible to live in sync with your cycle? Do you struggle with a negative mindset around your period? Are you wondering if it's possible to be feminist and anti-birth control? We're going to explore these questions and so much more in the Managing Your Fertility podcast, because this is about helping you live a whole and full life. I'm your host and guide, Bridget Busacker, joining you in this journey of exploration related to women's healthcare, feminism, and fertility awareness. Are you ready? Let's get started.
Alex, it's awesome to have you back on the show. Thank you for being with me.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for having me, Bridget.
For those who did not catch the last episode that we had Alex on or are hearing this for the first time, Alex is a family nurse practitioner and fertility care practitioner turned stay-at-home mom and homeschooling mom to her 4 sons. She is passionate about empowering women with knowledge for fertility awareness, joyful encouragement, and the dignity of motherhood. She also has great tips for marriage and family life that way too. So really excited to have you on. You can follow her at Alexandria DeRose. Excuse me. I'm going to cut that out. Let me try that again. You can follow Alex on Instagram at Alexandria DeRose, and we'll be sure to tag her in the show notes as well. But Alex, really excited to have you back here and talking more specifically in this first part around marriages and specifically intimacy inside and outside of the bedroom. You do a great job of talking about marriage, dating tips, fertility awareness. I mean, really like all of the things, and really centered around building healthy, holy marriages online and on your blog as well. So before we jump into this topic, can you just tell a bit about yourself for those who may be meeting you for the first time and why you're passionate about talking on this topic?
Oh, sure. Yes. Thank you so much, Bridget. I know I've just loved connecting with you through this world. It's just been awesome. And yeah, so Bridget and I, we met through our blogs and through social media, which has been great. And so I am a wife to Nick. We're both cradle Catholics, met on Catholic Match 10. We just celebrated our 10-year anniversary, which is crazy. Awesome. And we have 4 little boys, baby to age 8. And so my background is as a family nurse practitioner and also fertility care practitioner. So teaching NFP with couples. So all my work has really been through my life centered around relationships and just nurturing, being a nurse and all of that. So it's kind of, trickled over into my work as a mom and a wife. So just last year before the pandemic hit, when we found out we were pregnant with our 4th son, I made that decision to just stay home full time and continue homeschooling and kind of take my resources and knowledge and all of that online. And so that's kind of my mission right now.
That's so great. I'm so glad that we met online. This has been like one of the most awesome Instagram friendships. It's so fun to have those like born out of Instagram when you hear so much around like, is it worth it or not? And I would say it's worth it. And especially with the content that you're sharing is so good. It is so uplifting. And I just want you to like get into a little bit more as we're honing in on the aspect of marriage and really dating your spouse, loving your spouse, and investing in your marriage. I mean, you're celebrating 10 years. That's a big deal. That's amazing. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you, Bridget.
Just, tell us more like why joyful marriages matter, why holy marriages matter. Like, why are you passionate around talking about this and sharing tips for those who are following your blog or following you on Instagram?
Oh yeah. I mean, there's just so many reasons. I think a lot of times we share, first of all, a lot of times we share things that we also need. And I would say a lot of things that I am passionate about helping other women through are things that I have walked through. And I think just when you have those experiences of having kids at any ages and having a marriage yourself, you kind of experience like what you need and hardships that you walk through and struggles that you walk through. And you think, okay, these are things that I figured out and things that have helped me. And I want to share that with others. So I think it just comes from that perspective of wanting the best for myself and my own family, my own husband and marriage, and seeing seeing that kind of united, those universal struggles, I guess, like the attacks on marriage and family and women, how universal they are. And so things that can help me and I feel like can help other women. And so I think that's where my passion there lies.
I love that so much. It really is so amazing. I mean, we were talking before recording this episode, just thinking about, okay, intimacy in marriage is so important. And I think oftentimes when we hear that, we think automatically, oh, sex, foreplay, and just in the bedroom or wherever it might be happening. But really, there's just like so much more to that. And really, to get to the point of having sex, that intimacy and building that relationship cushion is so important. And I just want you to speak more to this, and just your wisdom that you share so much of, what are ways that women, I think, especially from the perspective of a woman, like how can we build up intimacy in our marriage, and just building up our husbands and building out our relationships so they're strong, so they're really good, strong foundation that we're really living from.
Oh my gosh, Bridget, it's so good. It's so good, and it's so necessary. I think some of the things that I think about first, especially as if we're talking about moms, first off, I'll start there, is just that reminder that like marriage comes before motherhood, in the sense of like we really need to be putting in this effort to our marriages first, in order to kind of give to other places in our vocation. And I think a lot of times what happens and even if you're before babies, before that whole stages, I think that it's so hard to without intentionally putting in effort for that all topics surrounding intimacy, which is what you're talking about. It's so hard to feel secure, like pouring into any parts of our vocation. Does that make sense? So I think it's just that point of intention, that it has to be so, we really have to make like an intentional effort, because it doesn't come, it doesn't, in the world that we live in, right? In like any type of society, these types of things where fostering our relationships around intimacy, it's something that doesn't just come natural. You don't just like say I do, and then all of a sudden, you're going to always be feeling a certain way. It's something that you really have to kind of intentionally work on through each stage. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. It's reminding me that how much you've talked about, you learning your spouse. I remember specifically, we've chatted about this, and you had also shared online that you had an experience where I think you had said you had gone to confession, and you were encouraged to actually learn your spouse, and you went to like a bookstore, and you were picking up different books related to marriage and relationships, and you were realizing like, oh, I need to learn my spouse. So maybe you could just share a little bit more about that experience, and like why and how that's helped you in your marriage.
Oh, absolutely. Oh my gosh, I remember that so well. And I think it starts out first of all with just like these expectations that we have, like going into any relationship, and things that pull you together in the beginning are great. And a lot of times it's, things that are opposite about you, they say opposites attract, and things like that about each of your personalities. And so you kind of start, you start from this one square spot, and then as your relationship builds, there's so much depth to the human person that you have these maybe expectations that you're like overseeing, instead of like really getting to, really getting to understand the person. And what can happen is kind of when those expectations aren't met, they can kind of build up in like resentment and misunderstanding, as opposed to understanding. And so I remember in probably I think that might have been like year 3 or 4 of marriage. And we had 2 little kids, kind of like where you are right now with your 2 little kids. And which I always tell people, and I know I've told you this before off recording, that it's like, that's one of, I think, the toughest stages in marriage and motherhood, because it's just, things are still so new, and you're navigating so many new nuances about each other. And so I felt like I was almost at like a wit's end. Like, what am I doing wrong? Why am I like, I'm never going to give up on my marriage. I'm never going to give up on my husband, but like, what's wrong with me, basically? And so, like anything in life, I always turn to the faith, and always, go to the sacraments for healing and for direction. And so I found myself with this priest in spiritual direction, and, I'm going on, and he just hands me a book, and he's like, Alex, take a breath and read this book and start here. Nothing's wrong with you. Nothing's wrong with him. You just need to come to a new point of understanding. And so that kind of led me down to a whole path of personality and temperaments, and which also plays into part with intimacy too, because you're understanding the person.
I love this because I think this is something that we don't often hear and we're not often seeing online. And, we're often seeing the celebratory posts, but we're not
Mhm.
really seeing, a little more the tips or like the step by step or experiences that are a little more raw to say, like, I was in this place and this is
Mhm.
where I had to start. And now I'm here, and to see that, I think there's so much hope in that. I think for anybody listening who may be like, wow, I'm at that point of wit's end, or I'm like, oh, okay,
Mhm.
I think probably I should learn my spouse. I never even thought about it. I mean, I think that was something for, just speaking personally, I think I'm really finding that now being in where we've like celebrated 5 years, we have two little kids, and it's like, wow, this is hard work. We are in the trenches. And
Absolutely.
I want to like make sure our marriage is a priority. Like, how do I learn you and understand who you are in this new space altogether, in these new roles? And I think, even if you don't have kids, when you're first married, you're in new roles together, you're forming new attachments, you're learning about each other. And it's so important to actually figure out, like, okay, what does that look like, and where to start?
Oh my
Do you
gosh, absolutely.
do you have like a recommendation for someone listening that's like, okay, where would I don't know, where would I start? Where would I go? Do you have like a go-to where you're like, do the temperaments or learn love languages or something that someone could just have that first step?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think when it comes to that, like you said, I'll definitely have, I can definitely link up a blog post of specific books. But I'm a huge fan of the temperaments, a huge fan. And the book, The Temperament That God Gave Your Spouse, specifically for marriages, I think is so awesome because there's basically four main temperaments. And so the book actually breaks down, okay, if you are this one married to this one, these are things that you might run into in your relationship. And you're reading it and you're like, oh my gosh, this is me and David. Oh my gosh, this is me and Nick. Like it's kind of
I'm
crazy.
realizing, like, we just did the temperament God gave you, but I think that's next
Yeah,
next for us to do, because it is
yeah,
like it's so powerful to learn yourself. I mean, I'm still having moments where I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is how I receive love. This is how I would give love. Like this is how I
right.
respond to situations. And it's like I think when you sometimes have that experience of learning the temperaments, it's kind of overwhelming in a good way because you're just like, wow, I feel like I'm really understanding myself. And now it's
Mhm.
like, oh, now I'm married to someone else. Now I need to be understanding them too.
Right. Right. Exactly. Yes. Yeah. So yeah, the temperament God gave your spouse, I would say is a great place to start for these marriages and relationships because you will feel a lot less isolated in your own head and you'll feel this like, oh, okay, I'm not alone in this. There's, someone's understanding what I'm going through. And there's kind of those practical tips there. And kind of what you were saying earlier, Bridget, just about intimacy overall. I mean, this is why, like, I know you and, we talk about that of the intimacy in and out of the bedroom, because when you understand, you're not going to all of a sudden understand somebody in the bedroom without, it needs to go both ways. And so
Mhm.
understanding them outside just as a whole holistic person in marriage is so fruitful for your intimate relationship as well.
Yeah, that's so true. And it's really segueing well into this next ask that I have of you around date nights. I mean, you talk about this and encourage people,
Yes.
and you do polls
Oh,
online and you have blog posts, and I love it because it has
yes.
really helped encourage me to stick with it. It's
Oh,
something that was like honestly, I think we were worse at it when we were first married without kids, because it was like, well, we don't have kids, we're around each other, and being around each other is not the same thing as actually having a date night.
right.
So maybe you can speak, well, obviously not maybe, you totally can speak more to this and just sharing more of like why you are so passionate about this.
Oh my gosh. Yes, I'm really, I really am so passionate about this because like I said earlier, something that helps you is what you want to share with others. And I know that date nights have been almost like a lifeline in our marriage, like truly, truly, truly. And it's also goes back to your temperament too, because when you find out, okay, I'm an extroverted sanguine, so I know that I'm, have high outside social needs, but that doesn't have play any part into what temperament you are. Whatever, date nights are just so essential to me. I think no matter if you're extroverted, introverted, and you feel like you're more of a homebody, I think that having that set apart time where you are specifically and intentionally like focused on each other in a way that's out of your normal routine, it just allows for more deeper opportunities and intimacy that just doesn't happen when you're in the daily grind and specifically when you're in home, when you're at home. I mean, there's something just about changing the environment that allows you to, connect in a different way. And when you kind of like study good marriages, I mean, people constantly will say, making date nights, making each other, having fun with each other, that was always a priority. And it's kind of one of the things you can't argue with. It's really so essential to just make time for each other. And I try to be really sensitive of, there are certain seasons and there are many different excuses that you can have, but when it comes down to it, there's usually a way that a couple can find a way to make it happen, if it's something that you really desire. And so I just would love for every couple to just really be intentional about trying as hard as they can to get as many date nights in as possible. I mean, honestly, once a week is like such a great goal to set. And it sounds so often, but start with maybe once a month and try to just have that once a month where it's written on the calendar. And, there's something about that, kind of like we talk about in our fertility cycles where, we know things are coming for each other. There's something, great about preparing for each other and just having that on the calendar where you can just look forward to it. And it just really just brings out, so, I mean, I could go on and on. It just brings out so much fruit from your marriage. And especially when you have kids, I think it's just so essential to have time with your spouse, away from your kids. And like I said, this doesn't have to be super expensive and super fancy. You actually don't even have to spend money when you're on the date night. You can just go to a park and walk around and maybe just buy like a $2 tea or something, for me, the idea of a date night is just going out somewhere with your spouse where it's just you guys having time together. And it can be even 1 hour, 2 hours, a breakfast date, a lunch date, a weekend date. Everyone has different schedules. There's no like, this has to be every Friday at 7 p.m. There's no right or wrong way of going about it. It's just making that intentional time for each other in a way that works for you in your season and in your own personal situation.
I love it. This is so good because I think it's something that a lot of times the excuses can come up more so than I think legitimate limitations, honestly, when it comes to dating your spouse. What does it look like for you guys, more on the logistics side for planning a date? Like, do you guys rotate who schedules it? Like at the activity that you're going to do, or do you guys just kind of agree together, or do you have like a go-to spot that you go to, just to give some ideas for people who are listening who are just like, I don't want to go on Pinterest and look, or they're like, I don't want to read anything else. Just tell me what to do.
Oh, I know. And it's so true. And I mean, for us, it's so, I mean, we have 10 years of experiences, and gosh, I really don't think, I would have to ask Nick and see if he thinks I'm exaggerating or not, but I really doubt that there's been like an entire month where we have not had a date night in our marriage. We have always made it work, always found a different way, but it's like you said, all these examples, it's always looked different. I mean, there's been times where, I think I was telling you this one time, Bridget, where it was literally like, we were so busy with kids and schedules. And so I would be like, we would just be emailing each other like, okay, is this where we're going to go tonight? And that was our form of communication, of figuring it out, because there are seasons where you just feel like, you are passing ships and you don't have that chance of just sitting down, having deep conversation. And so to answer your question, it's looked different in different seasons. It really has. Sometimes in the beginning of dating and marriage, I would say, Nick would pick different places to kind of more like surprise me. And then it would rotate. Then when we had kids, and then as I became a stay-at-home mom, then maybe it would be more fun for me to like pick a place or a time. And to be honest, our go-to is just a dinner date. So that's our go-to, is like just having a dinner with just me and him. And, maybe having a drink. That's probably our favorite. Right now, we have a local spot where our past like 3 to 5 times we've gone to the same restaurant, which is like 5 minutes away. And we just get a glass of wine. He gets maybe a dinner plate, and we just have 2 hours where it's just us sitting down, and it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing.
Awesome.
So,
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's so amazing. And yeah, I mean, there's definitely times where it can be more of an activity, or we've done that sometimes, have gone to movies together. But in this season of just these little, having these little kids and just craziness with family life, honestly, 90% of our dates are just having dinner and drinks together. That's kind of our go-to.
I love that. What do you recommend for somebody who's thinking, I can't get a sitter, or we're going to have to be at home for our dates? Like, because you're saying, how good it is to get out. And I would actually agree with that. I mean, the times that we've been home, it's been harder to be more intentional just because there are the distractions where you're seeing like, oh yeah, we've got to like respond to those, letters we got in the mail or those bills, or like, oh yeah, that's right. Like hearing the kids, or you hear somebody cough or something, and it's just like,
Right.
okay, what was that? And so as much as like, I want to say, yeah, you can do it at home, I think like there is that element, like, maybe, like you said, like, okay, once a month, like get out of the house. But,
Right.
maybe you can speak to that too, just those different seasons. If someone's like, I can't do a sitter every week, or I don't think we can get out, like how to just get creative in thinking about it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And like I said, I mean, it can definitely be like a sensitive topic because there's so many other factors, like childcare and finances and scheduling. So there are a lot of things. And I mean, I'm speaking to, personal experience of what has worked. I know for me, and like I said, it goes back to the temperament of why I'm so passionate about getting out, because I know the fruits that that's had for me. And I do think that there's something to say about that. But if you really, first of all, I would just say also to try really hard to look for a sitter, talk to your spouse about how that can look for you guys, like what you both desire in that, and use the resources available to us, like in the modern age. I mean, the internet and online, there's ways that you can still, what is the word I'm looking for? Not boundaries. Sorry, I'm trying to think of this word. In basically a safe way. I mean, there are, care.com, there's ways that you can filter and you can pay for a subscription. So, people that you're interviewing, my point is saying that there's tools out there where you can find good babysitters, like looking in different homeschool groups in your area, or colleges, word of mouth, moms groups, like using online moms Facebook groups. There's just a lot of tools out there of looking for sitters. I think sometimes when I've talked to women, it's almost like they've tried a little bit and then have given up too quickly. So I think that that's something, and you can always reach out to me too for ideas and help on that. So that's something that I would definitely start with, and just not give up on, because there's people willing to help you, I think. And then getting creative with even different things in your area. Sometimes there's like parents' nights out at like YMCA's where you can use gym childcares, and sometimes like church festivals. Like there's a lot of people out there that are willing to help, to get creative. And it's kind of like last resort, if you have to be at home, you are, if you're married, if you're in the relationship, like you have the freedom of putting it on the calendar and saying, you know what, tonight's going to be different. And tonight is going to be, we don't have a babysitter, or we really can't go out of our house, but you have the freedom of making it a special date night, and still going upstairs and still putting on like a different type of dress, and, still dimming your lights, putting on candles, even if, you have to do it later if the kids have to go to sleep. But you can absolutely make a romantic date in your own house, and, really spice it up and really make it different than just your normal, Netflix on the couch. There's absolutely, you have the complete freedom to do that and make it this like fun date night. I mean, how often do we like ever dance in the kitchen with our spouse, like, you know what I mean?
Love
Like
it. Yeah, it's true.
But if you're married and you can do that, it's kind of that just mindset shift of like, wait, I can do this. It just requires a little bit more planning and a little bit more intention, specifically from the woman, I think. For us, it has to be something that we really desire and want to do. And instead of, getting resentful, oh, I can't go out, I don't have a sitter, saying, okay, you know what, this is what I can do. And, what are my options? Okay, well, maybe I can put on some fun music and still get dressed up in my own kitchen. So I would say, there's definitely creative ways you can do that.
I love all the examples you give. And as you're talking to, just noting this idea, I think for for women, it's not an idea. I mean, I think it's a frame of mind that we can sometimes get stuck in, where it's like, well, if it can't be this way, then it's not going to work at all. Like if it has, and I know that's not only specific to women, but I think that can be a challenge and really segues well into this next area that we wanted to get into with around sex, just getting, I think, stuck into a mindset or a narrative that we've heard or that we've told ourselves, there's only one way to do something and it can only be that way. And if it doesn't pan out or if it doesn't work that way, then it doesn't work at all. And I know an aspect to this, and I want to be sensitive because I'm talking about healthy relationships where, there aren't issues of use or abuse, but in the context of sex, we've just seen and I think heard a lot of times as women that husbands, they just want to get laid or all they want to do is be physical. And there's no conversation around, where does that stem from? Where do these narratives come from that this idea that my spouse, just doesn't care about me and just cares about my body? And I think we tend to hear that. And there's an aspect of turning off and turning away from our spouse. And we had been chatting about this, like, what if it's a mindset shift, because I think there's the common things around like, okay, I'm tired, or if I have kids, I've had a lot of physical touch already, or there are other things I need to work on, or, all these other activities that we think of, and sex is like the dessert or the thing that we do when everything else is in order, instead of realizing sex is an integral part of our relationship and our marriage. And just to see how these narratives can come out. And I think some of it just has to do with, how over-sexualized we are in our culture. We're not really talking about sex like in a real and authentic way. We're just talking about, aspects of it. And I don't mean to get totally long-winded about this, but I think just to lay the groundwork, how can we approach this? And if we did approach it in a different way and change the narrative to say, instead of, oh, he just wants to like be physical, he doesn't care about me, he doesn't see me. What if he does? And what if it's a shift that we can make as women to say, my husband really wants to love me in this way and be close to me. Can I receive that? Can I receive him? Instead of immediately, shutting down. And I get, again, there could be, we're talking about, pretty healthy functioning relationships. And I get these aspects of mindset shifts and narratives can really come from our own wounds. But I think there's something to be said, just to bring it to light as part of the conversation. What if it's changing the narratives that we're hearing or the scripts that we have running in our heads to actually connect with our spouses in a different way? That's super long-winded, but I know I know you have a lot to say on this too, but I just want to, give the framework to that because I think it's huge.
Oh, it's so big. Oh my gosh, it's so big, Bridget. And honestly, just even in my own marriage and even training in relationship in the fertility awareness and like NFP, world there, it's been really eye-opening just learning and understanding the differences in all of those areas with men and women. And like you said, what happens is, the culture takes something good and just completely twists it. And then confuses us in our marriages, because, intimacy and like sexual union. I mean, that's like one of the biggest gifts of our marriage. And when you study, our faith and you study the understanding, like I know you love the theology of the body as well. Like when we study these things, we see how beautiful and absolutely holy it is. And any type of just confusion around that is just, it's completely, not of God, trying to confuse us and pit men and women against each other within marriage when it has to do with sex and intimacy. I think it's just somewhere to start with that awareness, right? Of just that's kind of like the bigger picture of what's going on. And what I've learned through my own experience and just understanding this, it really is so much more simpler than we women make things. Cause we know like women, we just love, it's the way our brains work. We're so much more complicated and intricate and emotional. And we have so many other areas and gifts that God has given our feminine genius to kind of be able to pick up on and help others with. And, the male genius, the man's, is amazing in its own way, but it's not as it's completely wired differently, right? Like, have you heard the spaghetti and waffles analogy?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, I love
I only laugh because I remember my aunt telling me that when I was like 14, and I was like, what is she talking about? She's crazy. And it has stuck with me for like until now. Like it stays with me because I've seen it play out, and I'm like, she wasn't wrong. She wasn't crazy.
So what it is for somebody who isn't familiar with me and Bridget, it's basically, you know, this analogy that, you know, women's brains are like spaghetti, and we're all over, and we have different connections, and we're connecting this to this, and we're constantly thinking of this pathway goes with this pathway, and we have, you know, like 20 browsers open on our computer screens, you know, and a man's brain is like waffle, like it's going in one direction, it's thinking about one thing. You know, when he's sitting on the couch watching a show and you're asking him, well, what else are you thinking about? He's like, well, what do you mean? I'm watching the movie. That's what I'm thinking about. And you're like, well, wait a minute, you're not thinking about this and this and this and this and this. And he's like, no, you know? And so I think the reason I bring that up is because when you said, oh, man just wants to get laid, and it's like, okay, so let's kind of unpack that. Like, no, your husband doesn't want to use you, doesn't want you just for sex, you know, but is he maybe like thinking about this one thing and we're thinking about a million other things? Okay, that could be true. But there's a truth in that. That's, you know, a beautiful truth in that our husband desires us in this way. And so the practical, simplistic ways that I would love for women to understand is just understanding that difference, and that, you know, there's that great desire for our husband to love us in that beautiful physical way, same as like with us in this, you know, emotional way. And I hope that this is making sense, that you're following this for people who are listening. And what I found is, you know, the more we can study the differences between men and women, we can learn to appreciate them. Just coming back to that earlier in the conversation, Bridget, when you were saying, you know, understanding your spouse and getting to know your spouse, you know, really having these, number one, just having these conversations with your husband and just really like talking to him about it. And, you know, and hearing from him. Sometimes we just need to hear as a woman, him say, you know, well, of course I want to be with you. Not in the way that you said, like, yeah, I just want to get laid. No, I want to love you. This is what I desire with you. And then all of a sudden our ears are perked up and we're like, oh, that's okay. Now I'm understanding, you know, what this is. And it's a, you know, a beautiful desire, the most beautiful desire really in marriage. And so sometimes it's starting with like that verbal conversation with you and your husband, and just really seeking to understand what his needs are. And, you know, when it comes to sex and intimacy, and understanding that about each other, and then becoming aware, this is, I think, one of the keys of marriage too, is as women, when it comes to sex and intimacy, of, you know, understanding the way that our emotions play into this, and allowing ourselves to prepare ourselves emotionally for our husbands. And, you know, not that can like always happen, but I think that there's a lot of great, you know, even, you know, research and understanding love and respect. There's a great book about that, actually, The Love and Respect by Dr. Emmerich. Have you read that one, Bridget?
No, I haven't, but I'm adding it to the list.
Yeah, Love and Respect is a really good one. Yes, I can share that with you guys. That's a really great book. But just understanding that those differences, and like I said, the whole spaghetti brain and how emotional we are. And so sometimes it does take us to, you know, emotionally kind of get ourselves, you know, prepared sometimes, and you know, for our husbands in that way. And that's not a bad thing at all. That's a beautiful thing, actually, and an intentional thing, and a thing that God has designed for men and women to be so different in this area, that we can come together in a beautiful way and kind of like help each other connect in those differences, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's awesome. Gosh, it's just so true how you lay the foundation for like, where does this come from? You know, first and foremost, you know, like the attack we have on marriage, but then to really get into the practicals too, to understand like, okay, we think differently, and to acknowledge that that's not a bad thing. I think it's like easy for us to think like that's a bad thing, that it would just be so much easier if we just all thought the same. Like that would be terrible. Like we are here to like be each other's, you know, we're helpmates. We're here to be walking together and journeying together in this, and to be challenging each other to grow. And I think that's the beauty of it. That's, you know, some of the aspects, you know, that are so beautiful about marriage. And I think, especially thinking as you were talking, you know, just being receptive to our husband's love. You know, again, we're kind of focusing on this podcast around like, you know, specifically for women, how can we be receptive to our husband's love and to be open to that? And what you said about, taking that time to prepare is not a bad thing. It's actually a really good thing. It's a gift to be able to do that. And, do we actually do that? Do we take the time to be intentional and to prepare, and to recognize, okay, for some listening, they may be like, oh, it doesn't take me that long to prepare. I'm ready to go. This is going to be awesome. Like and that's great. And I think for others, you may be hearing it going, yeah, I definitely probably should prepare. So I don't feel like I'm surprised every time it's like, oh, hey, if you're using a fertility awareness method, you might be going like, okay, tonight looks like a great night, and this would be great. And this would be great to connect. I remember sometimes feeling in the process of, charting where there were moments where it was like, oh man, this is like the green light, or like we could have sex tonight, but there's so many other things I could do. And it really challenged me to be intentional and have to choose and say, okay, well, do I choose my spouse or all the other things I want to get done? Like what's going on here? And it's, I think it's just indicative of how easily the devil tries to get into our marriages and really pull us apart. We both heard a quote, and we heard it from different people, and we were both like, oh my gosh, did you hear this?
Yes.
Someone had told this to me when I was engaged, and she was mentoring me, honestly, in my engagement, and just like kind of helping me. Like she was there to answer questions for me and just help me prepare. It was really amazing. And she had said, the devil will do everything he can to bring you together when you're dating. And he will do everything he can to tear you apart physically, talking about physically, when you're married. And hearing that, I was like, she crazy. This isn't real. And now being married and having you remind me of that quote when we were texting, I was like, oh, that's so real. There have been so many times where I'm like, why did I feel like I was like so much more like physically like attracted or like wanted, not having sex, but like so desirous of David, like engaged or dating. But like when we're married, I struggle with it. I'm just gonna be totally honest. Like there are so many other demands, and it's easy to just kind of see your spouse as like your roommate, honestly,
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I know, Bridget, I cannot believe that quote was so powerful. Yeah. The devil will do everything he can to, and I even heard it in the way of, the devil will do everything before you're married to get you in the bedroom. And then the devil will do everything when you're married to get you out, which is just right what you're saying, just, trying to twist, once again, like twist one of the most beautiful gifts of sex that, can happen. And yeah, I think that it's such a reality. And I appreciate you being just so open and vulnerable here. I think it's something that is just really not talked about, and people in marriages are really suffering alone with this. And no one's really talking about, what's normal, like what's going on, what's normal here. And and I think that just having a friend or having somebody that you can talk to as a woman through this in a healthy way, I think is so valid and helpful. And specifically talking to your spouse about it and just being honest and being like, okay, let's try to troubleshoot here. Like why is our intimacy so low or non-existent, maybe in the stage of little kids? Okay, that's really normal, right? For that to happen, just because you can feel so exhausted and tired. And as women, we were saying earlier, that's really hard for us to prioritize, intimacy in the same way as our husbands. It's just the way that we are differently created. And so it's something that we really need to be intentional on, and really need to, understand, have that awareness and understanding of more. And I think that that's why another reason why date nights are so important for women, because it's getting our mindset and our emotions in a different atmosphere where we can kind of enter into a new conversation with our husband and kind of get on that same page, and can kind of foster intimacy in the bedroom even more,
Yeah, totally. It's also getting me thinking, like what for women, like what is it that makes you feel beautiful, or like that makes you, feel beautiful, feel good, that, your spouse also acknowledges, like maybe there's something, that he really enjoys, like if you wear perfume or something like that. There's nothing wrong with showing up for our spouse and doing something for our spouse. I think there's so much around, the narrative for women today and some aspects of feminism that are just so toxic, and thinking that, it's not okay to do that. It's not okay to love your spouse, to think about, how do I receive my husband's love? How do I give that love? The vulnerability. I mean, honestly, it's like an attack on vulnerability in marriages, and how important that's like essential to have a relationship. You need to be vulnerable. That's an area where, a lot of times you realize, I'm like, whoa, marriage is so much more than just being physically naked. I mean, it's spiritually and emotionally naked in front of your spouse, and to be willing to be vulnerable in that way. I think it just really challenges this idea of, I'm my own woman, I do it all myself, and I don't need to show up for you. And so what, then your spouse is just there to be there for you when you need him, or you want to use them. I mean, like, it really starts to pull at, where do these ways of thinking and these narratives that we have are actually detrimental to who we are as women, and as a couple, and as a wife. And I just say that because I think about my grandma, my mom and my aunt. One time I didn't have I didn't have any makeup on. I'd been kind of running around cleaning her apartment. We were probably like in their first or second year of marriage, and my mom and my aunt were over, and I was like, oh, David's gonna be home soon, and they were like, are you gonna put on makeup or anything? And it wasn't out of this vanity. They were just, I was like, what? He doesn't like care if I have makeup on or not. Like, but no, but like, I mean, he always kind of oogles over you when you wear, when you look beautiful, and he knows like you're dressed up, you're excited, you get your energy. And I'm like, yeah, I guess so. And I hadn't really thought about it. I kind of was like, psh, that's ridiculous. But my mom and my aunt had shared a story that my grandma would always put on lipstick before my grandpa came home. She'd be like, oh, your dad's coming home. And she would like put on some lipstick and just kind of like make sure she looked good and was like ready to go. And first when I heard it, I was like, that is so backwards and silly. Like, he doesn't love her for like her lipstick or whatever. Like, why is she doing that? And the more that I think I'm, just married and in the trenches and with little kids, and thinking about that more and more, just the value of feeling beautiful does make a difference, whether it's makeup or not. You don't have to be a makeup person, but maybe it's that, you dress and it makes you feel good. It's the worthy of wearing movement that's challenging us to like wear what's in our closet and feel beautiful for ourselves, but also like, it's okay to get dressed up for your spouse too. And, it's like, I don't have a perfect answer with it by any means, but I think just challenging those ways of thinking, there's a freedom, I think, when we acknowledge that, and we decide that we're going to show up for ourselves and also for our spouse.
Oh, absolutely. I love what you said, Bridget. It's so true. It's so true. And it's also like it's not so hard. Like sometimes we can get so defeated in our marriages when it comes to, intimacy and sex and our marriages and all of these things. And really it can be as, God can redeem everything so much through his grace. And it can be as simple as like what your grandma said, and like just making that decision to put our spouse first and do it out of love for him, and say, you know what, I'm not feeling amazing, but I am going to take a shower and I'm going to get dressed nice, and I'm going to think about him, and, plan a date night or something simple that is possible that we were able to do. And then it really just like changes, and it just changes everything. I mean, I know that those times where I choose to like show up for him and choose to think about him and his needs, and, what understanding him more, it's always better for our relationship. It's always better for our marriage. Right. And it doesn't have to be like this huge thing that we need to, we're completely failing and that's it. We need to just do something drastic. It can really be in those little things. Like you said, just little putting on lipstick, or, planning one date night, like something small that you can do that can, or just deciding tonight, hey, you know what, I'm actually going to initiate something in the bedroom tonight. Like, when was the last time I did that for my husband, and thinking about those small things that can make such a difference. And so I love that example with you said with your grandma. That's awesome.
Yeah. And I should clarify too, we're not just doing this so it's like, okay, so then like to always lead to sex. It's really just about, there are aspects to that, of course, of like a part of what we were saying of like preparing and just like getting in the mindset and, getting dressed up, whatever it might be that makes you feel beautiful. And there's also that element that it's just helpful and good to do for your marriage, regardless if you're going to have sex or not, just to like show up for your spouse, go Absolutely. Like take that extra step and do it. Be willing to be vulnerable to show up for your spouse. Because I think it's oftentimes we're waiting for the other person to do something. I think that's like a tendency that we can have when it's like, no, we each have to be proactively doing something. Because if we're not, things aren't going to happen. And like you said, it's not like, oh, everything's falling apart. It's not working. Okay. It's all terrible and horrible. It's like, just do one small thing. That is so much better than nothing. I mean, we say that with everything else, like whether you're, getting into habits of working out or going, back to work postpartum, or you're learning how to be a mom, or you're a student and you're just starting out in college, like whatever it is, we always say like, just take one step. And we need to apply that same advice really to our marriages. Like, just take one step, like don't stop trying, because that's where the power is.
Absolutely. It's so true. I agree 100%. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. And there's so many small things you can start with. I remember one of the tips I was talking about recently was, and I think this might've been on an anniversary post or something, was just making sure that you're kissing every single day. And it's when I looked back, I think I was talking about a 10-year anniversary, and I look back and think, wow, how ashamed I've been to think that there's been days in my marriage where I don't think that I kissed my own husband. And my gosh, like, I don't ever want that to be the case, like, here's this man who we're pledging our love for each other. And, I want to make sure I'm kissing him every single day. And of course, not that we're going to be, that's going to lead to sex right away. It's like, no, doing it out of love for him. Like you said, it's despite that, it's making this act of tender love and an intention. And so that's something like we can do, as women, and something sounds small, but like, how big is that? Right.
Exactly. It's the small things that really add up. It really is. And it can sound so cheesy to hear that, but it's so true. And it's in those small moments where we choose to love that we see the biggest impact. Like, that can be the moment that like changes the course of the evening, and just seeing like, wow, you have a really great conversation, in the evening because you chose to show up for your spouse, and you end up having like a really beautiful conversation or time together, or you share drinks on the deck, or you sit outside and watch the stars, or whatever it is, just to take that time or that moment to kiss your spouse, whatever it is, to just acknowledge them and to choose them. I mean, because this is really about choosing our spouses, whether it's in or outside of the bedroom, to build that intimacy, because it's not something that just happens. It's not like, the Hallmark movies, as much as I love Hallmark, there's so much lacking in really seeing like the choice that you have to make to love. And we don't see the happily ever after in the movies. We see the lead up, dating and engaged, and it's so beautiful, but we never see the in and out of the work, because I think in some ways, I think we have this idea like, oh, it's not going to be beautiful. It's just like the same old life. But isn't it G.K. Chesterton that says the most beautiful thing in the world is an ordinary man and his ordinary wife and their ordinary family and their ordinary love, or something to that effect? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Absolutely. Yes. Love that quote so much. It's so true.
It's just, I think it's something that we have to remember, I think, in the world of glitz and glam online, and wanting to see, I think the fight we hear about, and we see, especially in like movies and culture of, really pop culture, where it's all fireworks and constant emotion, that it's really in the everyday. It's in the ordinary, and the ordinary is so good that there's actually so much fruit in those spaces when we choose to lean in.
Oh my gosh. Amen. Yeah, absolutely. I love that so much. I remember a quote. Yeah. Sorry, I don't know if you're going to say this is
No, go ahead.
But okay. Cause it's like that, but it says, was saying that like sex starts in the kitchen, meaning like it's in the ordinary kitchen. Like you're cleaning up the dinner dishes together. And like, that's where those little things, like those little ways that you're doing things in the kitchen together when there's kids all around, like that's what builds the fruit of a marriage and the fruit of, each other, and sparks that romance in and out of the bedroom. Right.
Yeah, because if you're just like waiting for like the perfect moment in the bedroom, it's not going to happen.
It's not gonna happen.
It might happen. I know we both you had sent an article to me. We were both like, wow, this is so good. And I can link it, just like, how often should you be having sex? And it was really just talking about how like the idea of like you and your spouse are going to perfectly align, and you're going to like always want to have sex. Like, it's actually going to be pretty slim to none. Like one of
Right.
you, there's going to be the give and take where you're going to say like, oh, I wasn't really thinking about that, but like, I'm going to be open to it. Or like, oh, wow. Okay. Like wasn't thinking about that at all. And, someone might hear that and maybe was engaged and they're like, that's so sad. It's not sad. It's recognizing like the reality of how life can just go by. You can be ships in the night, but if you're choosing each other and you're choosing that intentionality and being receptive to each other's love and honestly receptive to each other's advances in love, like that's where the magic happens. That's where you grow and it can become a really beautiful love and a beautiful relationship because you're leaning into the vulnerability and the receptivity. That's so pivotal. That's life-changing, really.
Oh, absolutely. You're so right. And you and I both know like this is possible. It's so possible. And yeah, and it's there and it's what God desires for every single one of our marriages. So that's really, I think, just hopeful.
Totally. This is so good. I could keep going, but I realized too, I'm like, all right, this is why we're doing a part 2. But this has been so good just to really get into this and just Alex to have you on and sharing more of your wisdom and truly your wisdom. Like 10 years of marriage is huge. And just to be able to have you on and talking about the different aspects that you've learned and the glory stories of your marriage and just being in the trenches and learning your spouse and sharing date night tips and just talking honestly about, how do we give and receive love in our relationship? These are powerful topics. These are powerful aspects of our marriage that we need to be talking about. And I'm so grateful you are online in these spaces doing it and helping other women to see the joy and the hope in building holy, healthy, joyful marriages. So thank you so much for being on and sharing your wisdom with us and just sharing your heart. It's been so great.
Oh my gosh, Bridget, thank you so much. Thank you. I just love the work that you're doing as well. It's so needed for women. And I know it's helped me personally. So thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. Please subscribe, share with your friends, and help expand the conversation around women's health. If you'd like to learn more about fertility awareness, visit www.managingyourfertility.com for more information, resources, guides, and so much more.